Plato wrote that in a single day Atlantis sank into the sea and was gone forever. The cataclysm was preceded by extremely violent floods and earthquakes. This documentary suggests Atlantis did not meet the fate Plato described in the 5th century BC. Rather, Atlantis survived intact into the 16th century AD, only to be conquered and destroyed in 1521 by Cortes and the Spanish conquistadors. Once upon a time, people thought the city of Troy was a fictional city, the product of Greek mythology. The city of Troy was the main focus of the Iliad, a story about a war fought between the Greeks and Trojans. The story first appeared around 800 BC. By Plato's time, at the end of the 5th century BC, the city of Troy could not be found anywhere in the world. It was non existent. It was mythical. Troy was a legendary city wrapped around a Greek myth, just like Atlantis. Throughout the Iliad, major Greek gods make regular appearances on the battlefield and behind the scenes. A Greek soldier named Achilles was dipped in a magic pool, and it made him impervious to the Trojan sword blows and arrow shots. It's the stuff all great Greek myths are made of. Then, in the 19th century AD, someone discovered the city of Troy. Suddenly, the city stepped out of the realm of mythology and into the realm of reality. It was now an actual city. Archaeological evidence suggests the Greeks fought a battle there. Does this mean the Olympian gods Ares and Athena graced the battlefield with their appearance? Does it mean Achilles was dipped in a magic pool that made him virtually invincible? Of course not. Those are the fictional trappings of a story that takes place in a factual setting, and it makes for a good story. And so with Plato's tale of Atlantis. It's a real city and real location wrapped in a mythological tale, just like the city of Troy. The Greek god Poseidon didn't make regular appearances at Atlantis, and rest assured, Atlantis wasn't wiped off the face of the earth in the blink of an eye by a deluge. Atlantis was larger than Libya and Asia combined. That's a lot of real estate to disappear from the face of the earth in a single day. And there is no historical, archaeological, or geological evidence to suggest a cataclysm such as Plato described for Atlantis happened anywhere on the planet ever. Because the destruction of Atlantis is not supported by science or history, it can safely be said it didn't happen. It's the product of Plato's imagination or bad information, and it makes for a good story. Plato's imagination explains why Tenochtitlan and Mesoamerica are a very good match for Atlantis, but not a perfect match. The number of matches between Atlantis, Tenochtitlan, and Mesoamerica is stunning. However, there are an equally stunning number of things about the two that don't match. Plato's imagination certainly accounts for some, but not all, of the mismatches between Atlantis and Mesoamerica. The remaining mismatches between Atlantis and Mesoamerica are due to mistakes accidentally or purposely inserted into the telling and retelling of an oral story that was several centuries old at the time Plato penned it. It's human nature. It's inevitable. From it all, it can be concluded that the tale of Atlantis is part fact, part distorted fact, and part creative fiction, a combination that makes for a good story. It's interesting that Plato chose earthquake and flood as the vehicle of Atlantis' destruction. Tenochtitlan had a very real history of earthquakes and floods. Plato's fictional destruction is actually rooted in factual events. He seems to be sensationalizing what is known to be real and true, just like the Iliad. Sometime between 1440 and 1450 AD, the Valley of Mexico experienced an exceptionally wet season. The waters of Lake Texcoco rose so much that Tenochtitlan was almost destroyed. Several decades later, one of the springs that supplied Tenochtitlan with fresh water gushed and overflowed. The excessive outpour from the spring caused Lake Texcoco to rise and flood Tenochtitlan at a great cost to the Aztecs. There's a bit of irony about the Spanish conquest of Tenochtitlan that casts Plato in the light of a bona fide prophet. Not a single ancient monument has survived in Mexico City itself because of the systematic destruction of the town by the Spaniards during the siege of 1521 and after it. Tenochtitlan has gone down before the destructive will of man. Atlantis is buried beneath a sea, but it's not a sea in the traditional sense of the word. Atlantis is buried beneath a sea of asphalt and concrete that is modern Mexico City, once the site of Lake Texcoco and the Aztec capital Tenochtitlan. In a strange way, Plato predicted the fate of Tenochtitlan 1900 years before it actually happened. To this date, no hints, no clues, and no remains of a submerged city or country with multiple cities has ever been found lurking at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean or Caribbean Sea, the alleged final resting place of the legendary lost city and country of Atlantis. The ocean floors of the Atlantic and Caribbean are no longer the great unexplored mystery they once were, and this can no longer be used as an excuse for not finding the remains of Atlantis the city or Atlantis the country with its multiple cities. Time and the advances made in computer, satellite imaging, and electronic technology have allowed us to map every nook and cranny of the world's ocean floors, including the Atlantic, Caribbean, and Antarctic. There is no sunken continent, sunken city, or cities lurking at the bottom of the ocean floors. The city of Atlantis will never be found at the bottom of the ocean because it's not there. The destruction of Atlantis, as told by Plato, is a fictional event attached to a factual city. Nothing more, nothing less. Just like the attachment of fictional Greek gods and magical feats to the factual city of Troy. Just like Godzilla to Tokyo. There is no sunken city or continent at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean or Caribbean Sea. Stop looking there. Stop looking in the Mediterranean too. Plato clearly indicated Atlantis was a large, heavily populated country. The islands of the Mediterranean are too small to be Atlantis. Size matters. Also, Plato indicated Atlantis was on the Atlantic side of the Pillars of Hercules, not the Mediterranean side. Antarctica isn't Atlantis. Atlantis was a large, heavily populated country with many cities, including coastal cities. Atlantis launched a naval invasion and subsequent colonization of the Western Mediterranean. It's impossible to accomplish such a feat without coastal cities supporting the war effort. The ice sheet covering Antarctica can no longer be used as an excuse for not finding traces of Atlantis on the frozen continent. The advances made in ground penetrating radar and undersea mapping give us an accurate picture of Antarctica. There are no pre Columbian roads, coastal, or inland cities hiding beneath the frozen continent. Antarctica fails Plato's criteria for Atlantis. Plato spent too much time describing Atlantis and not much time telling a story or myth about it. He had such difficulty pronouncing the names of the people, the places, and the things of Atlantis, he was forced to give them Greek names or omit them altogether. All these things signify Plato was writing about a real place and real city. In all, this documentary revealed 50 matches between Atlantis and Tenochtitlan, Mexico, and Mesoamerica. That's nearly 5 times more matches than all other proposed locations for the lost city combined. And the 50 matches in this documentary are just the matches that made the final cut of this video presentation. There are nearly 2 dozen more matches, near matches, and downright interesting things that didn't make it into the final version of this documentary. 50 matches between two things believed to be different from each other is not a coincidental association. It is proof that both are one and the same. Tenochtitlan is the city of Atlantis. Mexico is the country of Atlantis. According to the accepted historical timeline, Tenochtitlan was founded in the early 14th century AD, a mere 200 years before the arrival of the Spanish. By showing that Tenochtitlan is Atlantis, this documentary suggests the Aztec capital is older than historians realize. According to Plato's testimonial, Tenochtitlan was a thriving city in the waning decades of the 5th century BC, and was probably a thriving city during the Phoenician conquest of the western Mediterranean beginning sometime in the 12th century BC. However, unlike Plato's assertion that Atlantis existed in 10,000 BC, this documentary suggests Atlantis, Tenochtitlan, and Mesoamerican civilization date no further back than 2000 BC. Tenochtitlan and Atlantis belong to the real world history of the Bronze Age. Atlantis survived into the 16th century AD and was utterly destroyed in 1521 by Spanish conquistadors with a lust for gold. The search for Atlantis is over.